Welcome to our event, Your Excellency. We are thrilled to have you with us. We have been discussing about a number of things that you'll be able to throw a lot of light on. So, first of all, thank you so much for joining us, Your Excellency. And I'm just going to give our audience a short introduction about your long and illustrious career, if you allow me. So, His Excellency Ambassador Christoph Heusgen has been the permanent representative of Germany to the United Nations since 2017. Dr. Heusgen has been the permanent representative of Germany since July 2019 and 2017. And not only that, before coming to New York, he served for 12 years as Foreign and Security Policy Advisor to the Federal Chancellor, Her Excellency Angela Merkel. Ambassador Heusgen's career in the foreign services also included terms as the deputy head in charge of European affairs in the private office of Foreign Minister Kinkel from 1993 to 97, and he was also the director of Foreign Policy Unit of the High Representative Javier Solana in the General Secretariat of the Council of the European Union in Brussels from 1999 to 2005. Also, the ambassador attended the University of St. Gallen, where he received his PhD in 1980 and then conducted postdoctoral research in Sorbonne University in Paris. He joined the German Foreign Office shortly thereafter, and his first post was the Consulate General in Chicago in 1983 to 1986. And the ambassador is married and has 4 children. So thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us. We are glad to have you. And we want to discuss, Ambassador, just to begin with, something about your career. When you reflect back, what skills do you think that upcoming talent in diplomats, what are the skills that are necessary for upcoming diplomats, and how have you seen the world of diplomacy changing from the time that you joined in until now?
Well, first, let me thank you for having the chance to join you today. Good to get to know you personally, but I'm also looking forward to the conversation with your students, and happy to join you here today. So on your question, you start off with a difficult question early in the morning. You know, I'm here in New York, and it's still fairly early. What are the qualities? I think the first quality is something which will surprise you, but you have to have normal common sense. What is also necessary is that you have empathy, that you are able to put yourself into the shoes of others, and that you understand where others are coming from, because this is absolutely the precondition for, in difficult situations to see where is common ground and where do you find a solution to a problem. Then, of course, when you are a diplomat, you are not a neutral person, but you are a diplomat for a country or for an international organization, and you have to represent this organization. And so you have to see that you always, defend the line that the country stands for. What it helps is to know the basic facts of international policy. When you go at a conflict, sometimes the new administrations say, well, it's very good not to carry the burden of the past and to go there with a fresh mind. This sounds very good, but in reality, it doesn't help. It's good to have a fresh mind, but you have to know the background. You have to know where, what made a situation critical as you face it. What are the background? What are the different interests? What I said before, you have to know, you have to put yourself in the shoes of others. And we can, go through individual crises and conflicts, but you'll find it is important to see where everybody comes from, but then to have a fresh mind. And this is something that why I always like to work with young colleagues, is to have a fresh mind. And this is what you bring to the table when you are active, and you and your students are active in diplomacy in the future.
I'd like to welcome Ambassador Christoph Heusgen.
Well, there are two different campaigns. There is the one campaign that we led successfully in 2018, and that was to run for a non-permanent seat. You know that Germany right now is sitting on the Security Council for 2019 and 2020, and then we will pass over to India. That will be, or other countries as well, but India will be a non-permanent member 21-22.
Right.
We believe that countries like India and Germany, but also countries like Japan and Brazil, and we are working together in the so-called G4 group. We believe that our countries also should have a permanent seat in the Security Council. Of course, this has to do with our individual countries. India being second largest country on the globe. Germany is the second largest contributor to the UN system overall. We believe that we have important contribution to make to the Security Council.
How after the pandemic, a lot of nations are closing borders. You see, trade seeing a dip, and trade barriers coming up. And with organizations like the United Nations, the EU, etc., how do you folks feel about that, and how what's the global diplomatic community doing about this?
Yes, this is of course one of the most relevant questions. How do we deal with COVID-19? First, I think it's very important that we all take this seriously. It's a consequence of globalization. We have all been promoting globalization, globalization for business, globalization for people-to-people contact, for tourism and everything. And this is one of the big accomplishments of our global society, that we were able to reach this globalization, so to speak. But it has, of course, then disadvantages, and the COVID-19 clearly is an outcome of globalization. If we didn't have all these travel opportunities, it would have probably been regionally contained. So we have it worldwide. So what we have to do is to cope with it also worldwide. This is why we have been very outspoken with regard to the strengthening of the World Health Organization. We believe it's not the right decision to say we can resolve this on our own. We have to work together. We have to have our forces joined also with regard to the medication, with regard to the production of vaccinations. We will not be able to isolate ourselves, individual countries, rich countries that are able to produce maybe vaccines and maybe tempted to say, okay, I look after my own people. No, because this would mean that you then also in the future want to isolate you from the rest. No, this has to be a global response and global cooperation. The UN is working on this. And there was a time in the early 80s where in Germany the Green movement started. And nobody understood what was that, the Green movement. The Green movement as a party, the Green Party moving into parliament. And actually in 1998, the Green Party became coalition partner in the government. So the Green Party was in German government, and if you ask pollsters today, they predict that in the next general election 2021, there's a good chance that the Greens will become a strong partner in a coalition government. What you have also seen in Germany over the last years is that when the Green Party started, everybody thought they were crazy for what they were asking. Today, almost all German parties have a very large chunk of green objectives in their programs. So why do I say this? you cannot artificially impose on a country a green movement. This has to come from its people. This has to come from the people being educated, learning, and then also personally being ready to accept the changes that this entails. And I think that is key. I believe that we have made enormous progress over the last years. I believe that the youth movement that we are right now, the Fridays for Future movement with Greta and others, I think this has been very important, coming from the young generation. I think that countries like Germany and others promoting this are very important, but we have to have this on a global move. We have to, unfortunately, still have a situation, including in my own country, where you have a coal industry, where you still have coal power plants, which by definition are not good for the environment. We still have too many fossil fuels there, and we need to make more progress. But this comes, as I said, with the mindset of people. We see in Germany that today, alternative energy is totally accepted. When you travel through, or I remember in my last posting when I was foreign policy advisor to Chancellor Merkel, the first time that President Obama was there with the Chancellor, and they took a helicopter flight over Germany. And the one thing that Obama retained from this flight was the number of wind energy plants in Germany when he flew over the country. So this is accepted. We have now huge wind energy plants in the North Sea, and they don't need to be subsidized anymore, so they become competitive. This is, of course, a big question, to have green energy then also competitive. But as I said, it's a mindset. You have to have countries that not only adhere to the Paris Agreement with regard to the environment goals, but then implement alternative energy.
Do you think there's a case with the rising tide of environmentalism, awareness, education, peaceful protests that are happening for climate change, like Fridays for Future? Is there a responsibility on each of the nations of the United Nations to work towards an international regime that regulates climate change? And secondly, what are the contours of the participation on the basis of, say, population or carbon emissions or carbon footprint? How would you want to address, or how does a fellow who is a GPODS fellow interested in diplomacy find a solution to this issue?
Yes. Now, I could tell you, yes, this is all possible, and we'll get there. We just have to work hard. We have to face the realities, and I'm working at the UN, but I live in the United States, and in the United States, I'm of course following developments, and there is a president and a government that has left the Paris Agreement, and that has here in their national administration actually has redone and uprooted a number of provisions that had been envisaged by the Obama administration with regard to better environmental protection here in this country. It's quite the opposite is happening. To get something legally binding with this administration is impossible. But when you look at these negotiations, to have something legally binding is very difficult to achieve. And I would not only look at the US, I would also look at at China and Russia, and within the European Union, countries like Poland that have a strong coal industry. they would, I'm not that optimistic that we, on the short run, we get something legally binding. So the Paris Agreement is the best we could get at the time, and it's the best for the time being. But what is happening here in the US is something that I believe is very important that it happens, and it does happen worldwide. And that is that people just not then resign and say, okay, we have to wait for another administration, and for the time being we don't do anything. No, people, mayors, governors, also in other countries, communities, local leaders, movements, they make pressure on their local communities and say, okay, we have to be carbon neutral. We have to make, so this, what I said before, the mindset is changing. We have to continue there. And at some stage when communities, everybody, and the voters expect from the government leadership with regard to the green issues, they can no longer only listen to the voices of industry that don't have an interest in regulation and then go ahead. So we are not there where you want us to be. But this should not be a reason to give up, but to continue to push, to confront politicians, to voice the opinion, and to actually do things on a local and regional level.
Do you think the presence of a hegemon like the United States, or any hegemon who is predominant in those times, is necessary for some of these regimes, such as the Paris Climate Agreement, to work?
Well, we are deep now into political science. No, I don't believe in hegemons. I do believe in multilateral cooperation. Germany is a founder, to let me make some PR here, is a founder of the Alliance for Multilateralism. We believe that you have to work together on an equal basis and with the same rules, and an alliance can bring forward. Don't work and wait for a hegemon. It may be a positive one that has good intentions, but it can also be one that has bad intentions. So rules-based international order, work for agreements like the Paris Agreement, and then agree, within an alliance to implement things. But we may see still fights for hegemons and etc. But this is very unhealthy.
Absolutely, thank you, Ambassador. Now we have questions from one of our fellows, Sahid Yunusa. Sahid, I'm just going to unmute you. If you could ask your question, please.
And maybe introduce yourself, where you are from.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ina. My name is Sahid Yunusa. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I am currently in the United States now. And I used to work as a consultant, and I've traveled a lot. I've been the speaker in several firms. And currently I consult for some organization in Nigeria now, but because I'm waiting for my work permit, so I've not been able to start working in the United States. But some few organizations have contacted me, so that's exactly what we're up to. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I would like to ask some few questions. My first questions go to, what is the UN currently doing to improve its legitimacy so that other continents can become included?
Yes. What is the UN doing with regard to its legitimacy? We have discussed that before when it came to the Security Council, which of course has legality because it implements what is written in the UN Charter, but it lacks legitimacy because it is not representative of today's world, and we have to work for achieving this legitimacy by reforming it. But unfortunately, there are countries that are very happy with the status quo and don't want to change it, and so far they have been successful in blocking all reforms. Now, the UN system, of course, is not limited to the Security Council. The Security Council is only one body. The main body, as you know, is the General Assembly, the General Assembly of 193 countries that are members of the United Nations. This body is very important. New York, the UN, very important because it's the only place where representatives of 193 countries come together. So by definition, there is legitimacy because here all the representatives of all countries come together. To a certain degree, I think that the UN have lived up to the expectations. We mentioned before the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is a UN agreement, and it is the one agreement which really is the one that will help our global society to survive. The UN, the General Assembly, also adopted the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. These goals that until 2030 where we will work for their implementation, because the implementation of these Sustainable Development Goals in many areas, not only environmental, but also with regard to health issues, poverty issues, city issues, governance issues, all this, there is a wonderful base for and an objective for all countries, for regions, for cities to implement that. And so the UN, I think, is trying to do a job, but the UN is a composition of its member states. And we have to see that member states take the UN seriously and implement what has been decided here. And so the UN can set the goals and can be the platform for countries to discuss and see how we achieve certain goals, but national governments have to, and societies have to implement it. So the UN can only be as strong as the member states are in actually implementing what the UN has asked countries to do.
One of our fellows, Srija. Srija, can you introduce yourself and ask your question, please? I've unmuted you.
Right. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello, sir. Nice to meet you. Greetings from India. I'm currently working with the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, as a policy and a communication analyst. Broadly, my areas concern tech policy and a bit of the. I also dabble in foreign policy and a bit of international political economy. So my question pertains to the idea of having, an internet governance or an architecture for internet governance. I mean, a question mostly relates to Jan, where he talked about the spread of fake information and infodemic. So I know UN has been doing quite a bit in terms of, battling this misinformation during this COVID-19 crisis, but also, given the fake, given the, this entire spread of social media being as a, platform, and this entire discourse of how we need to regulate and sort of, control it, not control, it's not a right word, but to sort of, regulate and kind of monitor its activities. And every nation is having these concerns, which are very, which are kind of becoming more prevalent because in the current global scenario. How would you see the UN as a body, as a multilateral institution, kind of facilitating the dialogue, and or is it possible for UN to sort of take on the mantle and envision such a a roadmap for creating like a global a coalition of nations to take forward this aspect of internet governance? Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much. This is again a very relevant question, and actually the Secretary General Antonio Guterres has taken up this issue early on, and he set together with a group of the heads of certain platforms, also internet specialists, to actually discuss what you have mentioned, and that is internet governance. What I have learned from all these discussions going on here at the UN, and there is a special forum that looks at actually met in Germany last year I forgot the name, sorry, but it will be extremely difficult to have a legally binding instrument. First, those countries and those that are the leaders and many countries don't want to have, through legally binding instruments, a limitation in their way to develop the market. But there is a growing sense of what I said before about the misuse of internet, and therefore to get a kind of a code of conduct to set common, let's say, political guidelines how to use it. There's a lot of action going on in this respect, and what we see on national levels, I told you about Germany and the responsibility the government puts on those who are carrying the platforms, that this has to increase, and we have to have a international international code of conduct. What is the downside of this trying to control internet, of course, is that countries that are not democratic, that are not pluralistic, that they try to censor and try to govern internet in a way that they don't allow for other opinions to make their way into the internet. And China, for instance, and this is something which then is the downside of the efforts to have internet governance. So this is still early thinking. As I said, legally binding, I don't see that, but I think the pressure also on the big platforms will make them more and more ready to agree to kind of a code of conduct. Last remark, what I also think is something we should believe is, and this is something we are working on in Germany and Europe, is to create platforms where those that are contributing to the platforms and give the information and all this, that they adhere to high standards, and that people know when they turn to a certain platform, they know this is the best of the knowledge. This is really something where we can trust.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We do realize that one session is probably too short to discuss all of the things that have been on all of our minds. But thank you so much for taking out the time and for being so open, humble, and candid in your responses. It really helps us learn a lot more about the three things that we are most concerned about. That's international relations, public policy, and sustainability. So thank you so much for throwing light on that. With this, if you could just give a closing remark for our fellows to leave with, because a lot of them are going to be working at the intersection of these three fields. We'll call it a day over there.
Oh, first, thank you very much for having me, and sorry for calling for gender equality. I realized, I didn't know, but I realized then that there are many women in your fellowship and fellows there, and but this is something that I believe is very, very important, to have gender equality, to have women in the proper place. And you can imagine where I come from, having served 12 years for Angela Merkel. And I see actually there was a New York Times had a story about countries that cope best with COVID-19, and at the top of the list were countries that were led by women. So this is why we want to promote on every occasion gender equality. Now, no, I don't have much to add to what I said before. First, I would like to commend all of your fellows and yourself for getting together, for looking at beyond national goals, but looking all the issues that you have raised have international repercussions, and to take this global view. we are living in difficult times. Economic crisis, COVID crisis, globalization in generally sometimes turns out the worst in people. People don't understand actually what is happening, and then they turn to I don't know, nationalists or to easy solutions. And we must not allow this. We must always keep our mind open, always take an objective view of things. Look, when you look at an issue, look, I said before, put yourself into the shoes of others, a scientific question, look at all different angles. But again, for this, you can, at one end, you can look at so many issues that in the end you don't do anything. So this is why we need the enthusiasm of all people, in particular young people. And what I heard from the questions from your fellows, I leave this conversation very optimistic, because they are all very dedicated, they are very knowledgeable, they ask the right questions. There was no easy answer, but you could see that you are actually putting the finger where it belongs. So let me thank you for being part of this conversation today, and wish you good luck, and also to your organization of bringing these people together, and also for all the individuals that they make further progress on their way and on their implementing the ideas, and don't lose your ideals. I'm now at the end of my diplomatic career, but when I'm fighting in the Security Council, I'm still the idealist that I was 40 years ago. And I think this is something you all should preserve. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And we must again reiterate how grateful we are for having you. And in fact, as in continuation of the greediness that I've shown throughout the session, we would probably also, out of greed to have more of some time with you, ask you to accommodate us in the future when the fellows have all come together, and probably have a session then as well. Thank you so much, and again, it's a pleasure to have you, enlightening for all of us, each of us. Thank you so much.